Go!
All right. Hello there, everybody. This is Two Non-Critics again. I am Non-Critic Will, coming from Hawaii, stationed here currently. And from the lovely cold New York, it is...
Not a critic, Dustin, and it's actually not that cold today.
Oh, nice. You got a hoodie on. Yeah. But, yeah, we are just two non-critics that we pretty much we critique movies that whether I have seen and non-critic Dustin hasn't seen, so I would give him the choice. I would choose a movie for him to watch, or vice versa. And it's all about old movies that just bring a sort of nostalgia to a nostalgic feel. So, last video we did, we spoke about Dune, the miniseries Dune from Frank Herbert. So, to continue from that, we went to Children of Dune. I have seen that, and I asked non-critic Dustin to watch that one since I've never seen Dune, and I had to watch that, so he had to just watch the sequel. And I just want to hear his thoughts about it.
Okay, well, I saw a lot of Children of Dune when it came out. I was really excited for it because I was a big fan of Dune and wanted to see where the story went. And so I was really hyped for it. I watched the first episode when it came out. Then I just quickly fell off. I wasn't big on Children of Dune when it first came out, and sort of just ignored it over the years. I'd rewatch Frank Herbert's Dune a lot and just pretend like Children of Dune never happened. But when I brought up us doing this, and you mentioned me watching Children of Dune, I was actually kind of excited to go back and rewatch it. And after rewatching it, I have to say it's not as bad as I remember. In fact, it's much, much better than I remember. I'd say it's very good. That being said, it's not great. I think it's entertaining for the most part, but there are things about it that really just kind of fall flat, and I personally didn't really connect with it as much as Dune. Now, after watching Dune and now watching Children of Dune, how do you feel about Children of Dune?
I feel more of I guess I feel more aware. I feel more of a completion because when I saw Children of Dune way back, like 10 years ago or so, when I saw Children of Dune, I was just it was just potholes. I was just wondering where did this all come from? How did it transpire to this point? Because like you, when Dune first came out, I tried seeing like the first episode or so, the first episode of the miniseries, but it just didn't interest me, and I really didn't pay attention. I just blew it off pretty much. So now with what happened with the last video that we did of actually watching Dune, fully watching it and seeing how everything came to be for children, I feel I'm at a complete circle now. I get a better understanding of Children of Dune.
So do you have more of an appreciation for it now that you sort of know the entire, well, the entire television saga as a whole, or do you basically do you like Children of Dune even more now?
No, I wouldn't. Yes, actually, yes. I actually do like it more since I've seen everything in its entirety. I actually do like it more because I'm able to appreciate it more. So, yes.
Okay, yeah, I can appreciate it a little bit more now that I've actually paid attention to it. But I have to say the major problem of Children of Dune is it's two books compiled into a three-part miniseries, where Frank Herbert's Dune was one book split up into a three-part miniseries rather well. This has part one, which is Dune Messiah. It's a sequel to Dune, and is, to be fair, a pretty short book compared to the first and third book. It's about 200 and some odd pages, while the other ones are well over 500, I believe. So it's a short book. It makes sense that they do 1 2-hour TV movie about it. And I have to say, that first part is the strongest part of Children of Dune because it feels whole and it feels complete. Once the second part begins, and it's all these almost 18 years later, and Leto is all grown up, and his sister there, and they're about to come of age and everything. That felt kind of jarring to me. It felt like we were suddenly being thrown into this story that feels like it started without us. And I know we saw part 1 with what happened to Moadib in Dune Messiah in part 1, but then all of a sudden part 2 we have to follow all these. They're not exactly new characters. They get introduced in the first part, but I had a lot of trouble settling in with part 2, and that's where the problems began for me, I think. Okay. What about you? How did you feel about part 1?
Part 1, I actually agree with you. Now that I've seen Dune. Yay! Same decision. No. Oh yeah. No, but yes, I actually do agree with you. Since now that I've seen Dune, the miniseries, yeah, there were things that were. It got kind of jumbled after part 1, because then it just skips ahead, and you're just like, wait, what happened? Like, it leaves a blank. It leaves a blank spot. So I actually agree with you.
Right. I mean, it definitely part 2 and 3 feels like one book crammed into 2 parts. Where it really, I feel if this was a 4-part miniseries, it would have been much better. I think they would have had more time, because when you watch Dune, you get this whole character arc with Paul. You see him as this 15-year-old kid into this 18-year-old man. You see him from the son of Leto Atreides to Moadib, savior of the galaxy. And there's this whole arc there. And I like that part 1 deals with the consequences of that arc. Not everything is hunky-dory. Not everybody is happy with Moadib. Moadib's not happy with Moadib. And that's really, really interesting. And then part 2 and 3 of the story is supposed to continue that. And it's sort of more or less the sins of the father falling on his children. And and that's very compelling stuff, but it feels there's so much going on. I don't feel like there was a main character. I feel like, I mean, there were a lot of different characters in the first Dune, but Paul, without a doubt, was the main character. And right, in part 2 and 3 of Children of Dune, it feels like you want Leto to be the main character, but you still have Paul's sister, whose name I can't remember all of a sudden. Elia?
Ali. Wait. No. Alia was Paul's sister. Paul's younger sister from Dune.
Right. Yes. She's taken his place, sort of. She's serving as proxy, and so you have a whole thing with her going on, and then
her going psycho.
Her going psycho, and you have Susan Sarandon all of a sudden planning something. And then you have a brand new actress playing the Lady Jessica, the Borg Queen from Star Trek First Contact, all of a sudden playing Lady Jessica, and she's got her own thing going on. And then you bring back the old character of, what's his name? Duncan Idaho. They bring like his clone in, and he's got this thing going on. There's just so much going on and there's all this sort of vague talk about the golden path. The golden path that Moadib was too afraid to go down, that Leto's going to have to go down. And that could have been great to see a transition from that, but because the focus is all over the place with all these different politics, I couldn't get engaged in one central story. I think that was my biggest issue with it, and that's why it couldn't go from good to great.
Now, I think we spoke about this before. Um, you were saying that you would want to see more movies or miniseries of Dune because I mean, there's a lot more. There's more books. There's more things that go on. So,
Hmm.
what would you like to see? I mean, would you like to see a continuation of Leto's story, or I mean, explain. What would you want to see?
Well, that's a good question because I actually looked into what happens to Leto, and it's really weird. Like, I mean, the Dune is already pretty weird, but I mean, okay, so what? Spoilers for anyone who's not familiar with the Dune saga.
It's not a movie anyway. The future of
Right.
what's going to happen.
in God Emperor of Dune, which is the fourth Dune book, it's
Okay.
3,500 years later, and Duke and Leto is still alive. I was going to call him Duke Leto, but that's who his name is. Leto's still alive, but here's the clincher.
Uh-oh.
He's half worm. That's what they were alluding to in Children of Dune when he mixes with the little baby worms and he
And
starts to get
his skin.
skin. Yeah, when he says my skin is not my own, he is not even half worm. He's more than half worm. He's what's called a pre-worm. He's almost full worm, and he's still the emperor of the galaxy. And basically, what the golden path was is he had to become part worm or mostly worm in order to, and I'm gonna fuck this up. So if anyone watching this is familiar with Dune, I apologize. But
Sorry.
he somehow suppresses man's desire to expand or to grow because he realizes that the reason tyrannical societies build up is because mankind has a constant desire to be greater than itself.
Hmm.
So people rise up. So he kind of suppresses that. So there's like 3,500 years of peace and the survival of mankind by suppressing the need to want to be better than them. And he has a weird relationship with this lady he wants to marry, I think, and then people are still plotting to kill him.
Wait,
Basically, Dune, the planet Arrakis becomes like this lush landscape, but there's
yeah.
this portion of it that's still sand,
Is it
and that's where he lives. He lives in the
he
desert, and he has sole control over the spice, which is why he's still able to rule the galaxy.
he's a damn three-part worm, mainly worm, and has a love interest that he wants to marry, and yeah,
So, like we said
yeah.
last time, I was like, I wonder why they didn't make more Dune
It's,
movies. This could be why.
wow, you had me at hello.
So
Wow.
I would be interested in seeing God Emperor of Dune as a miniseries just to see how they're going to pull that off.
Yeah, I would be interested in seeing that too. It sounds so weird.
Mm-hmm.
So that
Here's
wow. I'm sorry. I mean, I'm just thinking about it. That's what everything has been leading up to. Is like the way his body has been slowly changing. Because even at the end of Children of Dune, you can still see the slow transition of his body changing. Like he's the very end, the last scene you saw him, and he was starting to get like fangs and stuff. He was starting to get sharp teeth. So yeah. So he in a sense he's turning into like those giant worms.
yeah.
Yeah, continue. Say what
No, I was just going to get back to Children of Dune. I was wondering why they kept what the Golden Path was so vague. And
Mhm.
knowing now what it is, I guess I can completely understand. Um, but something that kind of bugged me with Children of Dune is you got James McAvoy playing
Mhm.
Leto. James
Wait,
McAvoy,
yes.
he's a great actor. I mean, back then, I
Yes.
don't know if anybody knew he was a great actor, but he is, and I felt like if they had given him more to do
Hmm.
and more to experience, it would have been so much more thrilling and fulfilling by
Hmm.
the end of this. When you see him running and he's like, "I am a desert creature," like that would
And
have, yeah,
well, I was gonna say, he has all that power, and there's, it's a fate that he can only, his destiny. It's a fate he can only fulfill, and he doesn't. He wants to die. I think it said, he would go and lay his head on his sister's lap and ask her to help him find a way to die because want to do he did not want to fulfill the prophecy that was coming to be. He didn't want to because of all the death that's going to transpire from it. So all he wanted to do was die, and now we find out 3,500 years later he's a worm. That's awesome.
pre-worm at least, and I believe he dies in God Emperor. But I mean, there are 6 original Dune books that Frank Herbert wrote,
Yeah.
and he was working on a 7th when he died. And apparently, the 6th book ended on a cliffhanger, and the years later, his son Brian and this writer Kevin J. Anderson, who's a very, very prolific science fiction writer, writes a lot of Star
Mm-hmm.
Wars, writes a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They got together. They started to write Dune prologues,
Yeah.
like prequels to Dune. They would do books like um, House Atreides of Dune and all this kind of stuff. So they would do books about the different houses and the Harkonnens and things.
Mm-hmm.
And then apparently magically one day they came across this, what is it called? The safety deposit box that had all these notes in it called Dune 7. And they were all of Frank Herbert's original intended plot lines and things for the 7th Dune book. And they went back and they wrote it. They wrote a book 7 and a book 8 based on his original notes.
Yeah.
So part of me is interested in reading all the Dune books and seeing what he originally intended. But
Mm-hmm.
also part of me just wishes Syfy would just do more of these. I mean, you don't have to worry about not recasting James McAvoy because he's kind of a big name now because part weren't. So you can cast anyone in that role. And you don't really have to worry about it.
Oh my god, yeah.
And speaking of casting, to go back to Children of Dune,
Mhm.
we talked about this briefly. I thought it was really distracting that Duncan Idaho was played by a different actor, especially because,
Yes.
I mean, he didn't have a huge part in the first one, but I remember watching it. I'm like, that's not him. And they're like, he's perfect in every detail. It's like, except he's a different guy. And so that just kind of, I mean, his story in it is actually pretty interesting about how he sort of relearns who he was and sort of defies what they programmed him to do, and
Mhm.
he ends up marrying Aaliyah, and his whole story arc is actually pretty interesting. So I would have been fine with him as the main character, but you've
Yeah.
got so much going on that, like where did Susan Sarandon's character come from? I don't really, like if I mean I don't understand. Like I said before in the first one, I don't understand politics ever, so I'm not going to understand politics in this fictional world. But is she's the daughter of the dead emperor?
Yes.
So if 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 what's that girl's name? Ruan or whatever, whoever ended up
Yeah.
marrying Paul. Why does that make Paul the emperor if she marries him? If Susan Sarandon's older than her, wouldn't that like? I don't get it. And
Yeah.
that thing was bizarre too because it was almost like there were strong parallels between Dune and Children of Dune. You had part
Mhm.
one, which is about the death of the father, and then part two and three about the rise of the son. And you also even have the other house plotting to destroy House Atreides and replace the Emperor with her son, which is like what the Harkonnens wanted to do in the first one. And so
Yeah.
that kind of felt like a retread to me. That was not very interesting. I did like that her son kind of went along with all her bullshit the whole time, and at the end
Yes.
he's like I'm not about this whatsoever, and he just kind of turns his back on her. That was interesting. So what did you think
Uh,
about the different characters and plot lines, or what were you gonna say?
well, actually, I was going to ask you a question. What did you think of? Spoiler again, everybody. Spoiler. What did you think
Nobody's
about
watching.
when? Yeah. What did you think about when Alia killed herself to be released? I guess from that. I guess the possession, being possessed or whatnot.
Well, that was actually pretty good. It was a fitting ending to what she was going through, I thought. Um, yeah, because they don't really. I had to look that up. They didn't really explain what the abomination thing meant in the
Yeah.
miniseries, unless I missed it. I had to
Because
look
they
that up
even
too.
because they even said it in Dune. They when she killed what was his name that possessed her. What was his
The Baron Harkonnen.
Yeah, when she killed him by poisoning him, and there was one lady that called her an abomination. Like, oh, she's the abomination that was spoken, that was foretold about. And I'm like, wait, what the hell? Like,
Hmm.
me coming from seeing Children of Dune, well, paying attention to Children of Dune first, then Dune. I'm like, oh, so they've been calling her the abomination since she was a child. Okay,
Apparently.
what the hell?
And I really don't remember them explaining what they mean by that. I mean, I know in the first Dune, the way I interpreted it was no one is supposed to be pre-born. That's an abomination. To have consciousness before birth is an abomination. I was
Yeah.
like, okay, whatever. That's weird, but I guess it works. And then in Children of Dune, they're saying that the abomination's taking over her or something. I was like, wait, what? And so I had to look it up. And the abomination is she has the consciousness of all of her um, ancestors in her mind, and
Okay.
they can. So they, in a way, they live on in her. And so what happens is the Baron Harkonnen, he starts to speak up, and sort of
Yeah.
take over. And that's what the abomination is that the
Oh,
ancestor can take over. I was like, well, why the hell didn't they just say that?
okay. The
And
abomination known as Alia.
yeah, and
We
and
save
it's sort of
him.
and it's sort of disconcerting because John Harrison, who wrote and directed the first Dune, he only wrote and produced Children of Dune. There was a different director, so I was ready to blame the director, but John Harrison, he wrote the script, so I
Hmm.
don't know why they didn't just leave something like that in. Like, were you confused by all the stuff going on?
Yeah, I definitely was confused. I still, thank you for explaining the abomination because I was still confused. Like, how the hell was she being possessed by him in the first place? Just why is she constantly going crazy? Like, I really didn't understand either about the abomination. That was one of the things that was getting. But aside from that, I really didn't. I really didn't feel that Leto's. I can't think of his sister's name, but
I want to say it's like Gamima or something because every time they said it, I thought of Temple of Doom. They're like Garima, Garima. I kept thinking it was that, but I don't know. I probably should have looked this up before the video, but I won't.
nobody's watching. But
Actually, we got quite a few views of our Odd Thomas review. That goes every day. I look and we get more and more views on that. So maybe people are watching.
yes.
Yeah. Anyway, what are you gonna
Uh,
say?
I was the sister. Gotta admit, I really didn't pay much attention to her role in this whole thing. Like, it just wasn't that interesting to me. The twin sister's role. It just wasn't really that interesting.
She
Sorry if
didn't have
people
anything
have.
to do. She was like a bargaining chip.
Yeah, I'm
You
just
know,
like
like Leto's got this whole thing going on, and she's just waiting around, and then they're like, "Hey, you can marry her son." All right.
politics, politics.
Right.
Okay, politics. All right, I guess. No problem.
And what about the recasting of Lady Jessica? What did you think of the new Lady
I
Jessica?
was I was pissed off, and that says something for me that I was pissed off because I seen Children of Dune first.
Now you knew her first.
Yeah, but I actually like Lady Jessica on Dune. I like that. I like the image, the actress. I like the image of who Lady Jessica was, and when you switch it, hmm. Another.
I was going to say, you know what I think it is with the image thing is the actress who played Lady Jessica. I don't know her name. She's on
Mhm.
Luther. I know that, but she always reminded me of Mary Poppins. She's got that Mary Poppins face, so that could be why.
Mary Poppins.
Could be why we're like, oh, Lady Jessica, instead of
and
the new lady, the Borg Queen.
and the thing is, yeah, I did like Star Trek, the Borg. I did like that though. That was actually, I think, one of the only Star Trek movies I've seen, aside from the newer versions. But yeah.
Maybe
But
we
anyway,
should do. Oh, we should do all Star Trek movies sometime. Anyway, go ahead.
ooh, good idea. Good idea. Um, what I didn't, I think what really got me drawn to Lady Jessica and Dune was just how I think well you and I we spoke about this how caring she was for the people. Um, when they left and went to I forgot the name of the place, but where they met the Fremens.
Arrakis.
She when they went to Arrakis and they were going to rule over Arrakis, she treated everyone with kindness, with care. There was no servants there. You know, I there was a specific scene at the beginning where I guess somebody just did a little test, dropped a glass or something on the floor, or spilled some water on the floor, and then a Fremen servant quickly ran over to wipe it up and clean it up, and she's like, and she's just pretty much like, this shit is not going down like that. This is not happening. Like, these are people. I'm going to take care of my people. Everybody's going to be equal. It's not going to be no servants or anything like that. Like, she
Well,
was just very.
I think it's she tried to sell the water that she cleaned
Mhm.
up, and she's like,
Mhm.
"No, you're not gonna be selling water that you clean up."
And she was just very kind to everyone, and said, gave them a glass of water and everything like that. Like everybody get your a cup of water, this and that. And she didn't want anyone to be walked over. So that's why I grew attached to that Lady Jessica. In Children of Dune, she was just more like some random ass lady that would just sit down and stare in sadness and fear and say a few words.
I was trying to think if maybe it's. I mean, in all likelihood, the original actress just wasn't available. It happens all the time. They have to
Yeah.
recast, and that's probably it. And the actress they got, she's a good actress. Like she's great as the Borg Queen,
Mm-hmm.
and she's pretty good in this for what the character is. But I have to wonder. I know that the idea is that Lady Jessica, after everything that happened in Muad'Dib's name, kind of got tired of it and went back to the whole Bene Gesserit thing. And
Mm-hmm.
so she's much colder and more detached now because she's part of the Bene Gesserit religion, and she shows signs of motherly love and caring that she had before, but she's more guarded now.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder, is that just the character, or is that the actress's decision to play it that way? You know, like this is a much colder Lady Jessica than the
Mm-hmm.
first. A little, like I said, more detached. So it made for the moments when she sort of shows tenderness
Yes.
feel kind of uncomfortable.
Okay.
for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that now. It just.
What?
Oh no, just go ahead.
I was gonna say I also wanted to talk about the visuals a bit because we both raved about the visuals in the first one.
Mm-hmm.
And how did you find the visuals in this one? What did you think?
I still like the visuals in the second one. I mean, the second one in Children of Dune. I still
The
like the
second one
visuals.
was fine.
But I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Because of the fact that I've seen it years ago, like 10+ years ago, and I wasn't really focusing that much on the background appearance, the images, the visual effects. Since I actually appreciate it more now, since I'm older, I like the visual effects more in Dune, just because I had a better appreciation, because I understand it.
Mm-hmm.
Children of Dune is more just of a nostalgic thing, like, oh, hey, back to the old school days when I used to watch that. So, I mean, the visuals were nice; they were stunning still, but I still had a better appreciation for Dune, since that was kind of like a first time thing that I'm actually watching it. I'm just like, that is stunning. That's amazing. So.
The reason I bring it up is because something I noticed last week when we talked about Dune, I said that they did this amazing thing where they used painted backgrounds a lot of the time.
Yes.
There was green screen and everything. To me, it was pretty seamless. It was very effective. In this case, you could tell the vast majority of those backgrounds were green screen, and it was not as seamless. And it was far more reliant on CGI, which is okay. I mean, lots of science fiction is reliant on CGI. It's fine. And it wasn't overly reliant to a point where it's like aggravating. But there were just certain like scenes, like the scene where the sandstorm is coming, and Leto's like,
yes.
"I will not fear is the mind killer." And
yeah,
it looked like
CGI.
he was standing in front of a green screen, and it just that kind of took me out of it. You know, go ahead.
What I was going to say, well, I don't know. It's a thought that came to my head. Because you were just talking about Leto, 3,500 years later, pretty much a damn worm. That makes me wonder if the worms that are there already, were they once people?
I don't think so. I think that's what he did is like a special thing.
Okay. It just brought it to my mind, like, wait a minute. Were they ever people before? But no, then I remember back in Dune where they had that baby worm and they were trying to tame that baby worm. So yeah, no. Yeah, no.
Something I found out a few years ago was that the first Dune came out, the first book Dune came out,
yes,
and it was a huge critical success, and I guess it had a pretty strong fan base, but it wasn't a huge financial success. Like it won the Hugo Award and everything, which is the highest honor science fiction has. And then Dune Messiah came out, and I guess it didn't fare that much better. It wasn't until Children of Dune came out that it got huge, that it was this phenomenon. And I don't think it's very hard to see why, because from this is when the sort of soap opera-ness of it sort of starts to come out. It feels like very just like, where did that come from? Like, you watch a soap opera, and eventually there's always like some crazy lady in it who's hearing voices and all that. And that's very much what I started to feel like with this Dune, is that it felt more like a soap opera. And that's very appealing to a lot of people. And I think had it had at least one more episode where we could have spent more time with these characters, it would have been much, much better.
I think so.
It has for me. So I guess overall, Children of Dune, good. It's a good sequel to Dune.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the best thing ever, but it's still better than a lot of the stuff you find on Syfy these days.
Would I like to see Leto as a giant ass 3-part worm with probably maybe his still a face? I don't know how that works out. And in love with
his arms too.
Mm-mm. And also his love interest and how she loves him back.
I don't know if she loves him. She has a love.
Just question mark. How does that work, guys?
It's interesting that Frank Herbert created this world, and he wasn't satisfied in keeping it about a certain group of characters. It's good that he wanted to progress. He wanted to say, okay, we're jumping ahead a few years. We're jumping ahead even more years. Okay, now we're jumping ahead 35, 100 years. Now we're going to jump ahead. You know, he's wants to explore the lifespan of a world as opposed and a civilization as opposed to one character. I do find that very interesting, even if it involves weird wound things. But so in that respect, I would like to see maybe Dune as a series. You know what I mean? Like, either continue with the miniseries or start right from back from the beginning and do the Game of Thrones thing where you do one book a season. I think that would be right there. You got 7 or 8 seasons right there. Would you watch a Dune television series?
I would. It definitely needs some good casting. Yeah, I would.
All right, so I guess we covered everything there is to cover on Children of Dune.
Yep. And people turning into giant worms. Yep.
So I don't know what we're going to talk about next, and hopefully we'll be back to our 2-show-a-week format. I got slammed with this crazy illness last week that kept me incapacitated for like 4 days. So hopefully next week we'll be back to normal.
Yeah, non-critic Dustin was pretty much on the golden path himself because it destroys your body before you get the power. So next week
my skin is not my own.
Next week he will be desert power.
But until then, and whatever we talk about, I am non-critic Dustin.
And I am non-critic Will.
And we're not going to do our normal thing. I'm just going to cut it loose. Bye.